The 2025 NFL Draft has concluded, and the Eagles have 10 new players to add to the roster, but did they do a good enough job? We'll talk about an overall draft grade, get into Howie Roseman's mindset a little bit deeper, and we also got the answer to one burning question that we had going into the draft. So we will get into all of it, but welcome into A to Z Philly. I'm RB. Do me a favor, like this video, go down below, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate everybody that stayed tapped in during this entire draft weekend. Lots of coverage, lots of players going off the board. It's been a draining weekend for all of us, man, but they made it through. The draft is still going on. They're on the final couple picks, but the Eagles are far done. They selected their last guy in the 6th round, and you're looking at their entire draft board here. 10 players selected by the Philadelphia Eagles. They started off with 8 picks. They end up picking 10 guys, which is a little bit surprising given where their roster's at right now. But what do you think? I want to hear from you down below. Chime in, instant reactions, instant thoughts. Now that the draft is over, give me your overall draft grade for the Eagles this year down below. And before we talk about this draft board, I want to get into the one burning question that we had going into this draft for the last couple weeks, and that was Dallas Goedert. Would the Eagles end up drafting a tight end that could replace Dallas Goedert? Now, they did not take any tight end at all. There were guys I liked on day 2, like the Mason Taylors and the Elijah Arroyos and Gunnar Helm and other players like that. Eagles don't take one tight end. They pick 6 guys on the defensive side, 4 on the offensive side, no tight ends. What does that mean? Well, Ian Rappaport says the Eagles would, quote, like to keep Dallas Goedert. We already knew that, but I think it's confirmed now that they're going to find a way to make this happen. Howie's always been a cap wizard. He can structure a deal with void years and move money around, signing bonuses, all that stuff, and figure all that out later on. But the fact of the matter is, I never saw a realistic scenario where the Eagles go into next season with a rookie tight end. The Eagles' philosophy has always been draft and develop. And I think Goedert will be here at least another year or two. And I think another big thing in this draft was Tyler Warren going to the Colts at number 14 because they were probably the biggest suitor for Dallas Goedert. There really isn't a need out there for any of these other teams. And Dallas Goedert wants a pay raise now that he's a Super Bowl champ. Eagles want him to take a pay cut. I think they're going to meet somewhere in between. But I think it's a good sign that Dallas Goedert will most likely be back with the Eagles. Now, maybe they can trade for somebody. Maybe they can do something else. But as of right now, signs are pointing to him being back with the Eagles. But let's talk about this draft overall. So we'll talk about Jihaad Campbell and Andrew Mukuba. We already dropped some content discussing these guys, but Jihaad Campbell, in my opinion, like if you want to look at this board and say who's the steal going to be, I think Jihaad Campbell is the easy pick, right? You trade up one slot with Kansas City and get Jihaad Campbell, right? You move up, and this is a guy who probably should have gone top 15, top 20. The only knock is that he had a shoulder surgery coming off a torn labrum. Will he be okay? If the medical stuff checks out, which Howie has done extensive work, and he said that they feel he's going to be just fine. They had him as a top 10 player on their board. They went specifically for best player available, right? We talked about that. Best player available versus need at the end of the 1st round. But when a guy like that falls out of Alabama, he's going to be a perfect chess piece for Vic Fangio, a guy who can move all over the defense. Crazy production last year, 119 tackles, bunch of sacks, tackles for losses. He can do everything. And I like how Howie Roseman said they're not going to put him in a box. He could be an off-ball linebacker. He could be an edge rusher. He has the potential to do a lot of different things. A South Jersey kid. Eagles picked a lot of lifelong Philly fans in this draft, and seems like they have an inclination for that. But anyway, Jihaad Campbell, if he is 100% healthy, is going to be a quick impact player for the Eagles. And I think he's an absolute stud. And I'm glad that they got him at 31. Andrew Mukuba picked in the 2nd round. And when you start to compare the physical traits and, the combine and everything, the 40 time and everything else, it's actually almost mirrored exactly to CJ Gardner-Johnson. So they get rid of CJ Gardner-Johnson. They don't want to have to go through that contract negotiation. They pick up Andrew Mukuba in the draft, maybe a little bit high for a safety, but they viewed it as a position of need. They saw value. They loaded up on trench depth here on day 3 later in the draft, and they probably didn't think Mukuba would be there. So they go and they get a hard hitter, high IQ, high energy, high motor player who's going to run all around the defense. Again, can do a lot of different things, very versatile, who's very similar to the guy that you just traded. And it seems like he has those leadership qualities as well. So if he can come in and compete for that safety position and contribute early on, I mean, that's a great value pick for the Birds. We'll have to wait and see. Has some of the similar issues as CJ with missed tackling, but overall just had a breakout season, and I think he's going to be a good player for the Eagles. So I like both of the first two picks. Then we'll get to today, and we'll kind of run through these. But in the fourth round, because they traded back twice, they got into the fourth round. They go and they select Ty Robinson, who is an absolute mammoth. If you go watch a little bit of his film, guy jumps off the tape, and he actually had the quickest 40 time out of all interior defensive linemen at the combine who tested. 6'5", 288. Listen to his press conference today. He sounds like a really stout kid and just a really smart kid as well. A guy who's very humble for his opportunities. 7 sacks, 4 pass deflections, and a forced fumble last year. Graded out well in the athletic score. I like this guy. And maybe this could end up being the instant Milton Williams replacement. Now, again, you have Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. That's going to be a story that plays out in the next couple weeks throughout this season. Moro Ajomo. But this is a great pick, great value in the early fourth round. And you bring him in, and I think he's ready to compete. A lot of great production skills from Ty Robinson. Won the pass rush with power. Like I said, this guy's a beast, man. Go watch him. I mean, he is huge, and he runs pretty well. A little bit older than their normal prospects, 23 years old. I think that's a good thing. I think he's ready to compete. Then, in the fifth round, because they originally had 4 fifth-round picks. This is crazy Howie Roseman stuff. They had 4 fifth-round picks. They end up with 3 of them and 4 in the 6th round. They had no picks in the 6th round. That is just the pick gymnastics of Howie Roseman. But anyway, they go with a corner out of UCF, Mac McWilliams. And Mac McWilliams, 5'10", 191, played 1 year at UCF after transferring from UAB, had an interception, 3 pass breakups, 6 tackle for losses, or 6.5, and he ran a 4.41 at the combine. Graded out well. They had a higher grade than most, but at the end of the day, once you get down to the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, it's just about trying to take flyers on some projects, seeing who can develop. I think what separates the Eagles from other teams is they have really good developmental programs and coaches. They give these kids a lot of great resources that I don't think other teams do right away, and it's why we see a lot of these late round gems. So we're not going to go through every one of these guys and try to guess who's going to be great. All we have to do is look back at these last 4 drafts. I mean, look at how many hits Howie Roseman has had. Are all these 10 players going to make the roster and be amazing? No. But if he hits on 6 of them, we're more than happy. You don't even have enough room for these guys. And wait till we talk about next year, because he added more draft capital for next year. Ladies and gentlemen, they have 13 picks right now. That could add on even more before we get to next draft. They could even trade up in the 1st round next year. There's so many possibilities. And keep in mind, they're supposed to be a contender again. Mac McWilliams' PFF coverage grade ranked 22 out of 494 corners in 2024. So they bring another guy in. You know, obviously Keeley is expected to be the starter, but you add more competition. I think adding another corner to that room, maybe a guy who could play slot corner as well, is definitely worthy. Then we go into the 5th round again. There was 2 more picks. They take Smail Mondon Jr., a linebacker out of Georgia, and then they take a center, Drew Kendall, out of Boston College. So Smail Mondon Jr., he talked and he has kept in touch with his Georgia Bulldogs. I knew they had to, right? They had to go with a Georgia guy. So they go and they pick another Georgia guy, linebacker, a lot of athleticism, a little bit undersized, dealt with injuries, but a guy who's a pretty good tackler. And I think he is going to have a shot to compete, maybe as a special teamers in year 1, see where things go from there. Like I said, they go with Drew Kendall as well in the 5th round, a center out of Boston College, 1st team All-ACC, son of a former NFL player. Guy, like it says right here, who can come in and develop in Stoutland University. And then the craziest moment of day 3 was there were reports that the Eagles were going to take Shedeur Sanders, and the Browns end up trading up 1 spot in front of the Philadelphia Eagles, and they take Shedeur Sanders. And I'm not going to get off on a tangent, but I think anybody out there could probably build a better quarterback room than the Cleveland Browns. But I really think the Eagles were going to take him, or maybe Howie threatened them. So the Browns trade up, they take Shedeur, and then later on, the Eagles take Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. And who's Kyle McCord? He transferred from Ohio State, broke all of Donovan McNabb's records this year at Syracuse. Guy has a great arm, threw the ball out, I think 592 pass attempts, grew up in Mount Laurel, lifelong Eagles fan. There's a little clip of him getting, the call, and his family just so happy that he's an Eagle. Really cool. Really cool. Went to St. Joe's Prep. And here's the quarterback room now. Jalen Hurts, Tanner McKee, DTR, and Kyle McCord. Not all these guys will make it. Who knows? But glad that, they went and got a quarterback, because I knew Howie was going to do it at some point. But I'm glad, they did it later on and didn't make it controversial. But really excited about this guy. He's got some great attributes, great skills, great traits. And, he'll just be a backup for now. We'll see what happens. And then to close out the draft, they decide to go heavy in the trenches. They go with Myles Hinton out of Michigan, an offensive tackle. Cameron Williams, an offensive tackle out of Texas. Then they go with Antoine Powell-Ryland. Those are the last 3 6th-round picks. So real quick, we'll run through them. Another big-time prospect for Stoughton University, 6th-round pick Myles Hinton. Also a son of a former player who made 7 Pro Bowls. It was a 4th overall pick back in the 90s. So Myles Hinton started 10 games for Michigan at left tackle, honorable mention All Big Ten. Just a huge guy, man. 6'6", 324. Has some pretty good physical attributes. Now, again, it's going to take a lot of work to kind of get him into NFL shape, work on his technique, his hand placement, foot technique, but he has the physical traits. And I think the Eagles have shown, the willingness to do that a lot in these last several years. Like they look for just the natural ability, the natural traits, even if you're not that polished, right? Even like a Jordan Mailata, and you bring them into Stoughton University and they find a way to craft these guys into valuable linemen. Like how we said at the Combine, he will never get sick and tired of drafting linemen. He is obsessed with it, and they're trying to get out in front of it a little bit. Another thing I thought was interesting was when Howie, before the draft, said he didn't have 32 first-round grades. We heard that there was a big talent gap, right, from maybe the 2nd or 3rd round to the 5th or 6th. So we saw him trade back a lot. He added a couple picks for next year. He's got 13 picks right now and counting. And I just think Howie was taking flyers today. He just said, you know what? A lot of these guys I don't have a lot of high grades on. So we'll pick some guys later in the draft, and we'll just keep trading back and getting more picks. I do think the rest of the NFC East teams had pretty good drafts. A couple of guys that I liked went to those teams, which stinks, but it is what it is. Cameron Williams started 10 games at right tackle for Texas. Another huge lineman, 6'5", 334, 4-star recruit. And a lot of scouts had this guy as a day 2 guy, and I'm surprised that he was here, but he was. So great value. Could definitely see this guy being a huge upside pick for the Eagles. 34.5-inch arms, had been as heavy once as 380, which is insane. If he came back to school, he'd be on the way too early mocks as a 1st-round pick. So great pick. And then, like I said, I don't want to go through the, hey, this guy's going to be a steal, this guy's going to be a bust, whatever. But this last pick in the draft, I don't know if I've ever seen production like this out of a 6th-round pick. Antoine Powell-Ryland, 23 years old, 6'3", 258, transferred from Florida to Virginia Tech, and he had 9.5 sacks the 1 year, and this year he had 16 sacks. 16 sacks this late in the draft in the 6th round. Very twitchy, a lot of bend, able to get around the edge, has an arsenal of moves, and just looking at a few things of film, I mean, he could be a guy where we're looking at, 1-2 years down the line back saying, how the heck did this guy fall to the 6th round? So overall, really excited about the players that they drafted. I think Howie did a good job at addressing every need. Coming in, we said, they're going to go in the trenches, defensive line, offensive line. We need to hit safety, tight end. We need to figure out what we're doing there. And, linebacker, edge rusher, all of it, right? And Howie Roseman hit every single position. He addressed every single position. They still can sign undrafted guys, and they still have a lot of time between now and training camp. They have a lot of draft picks for next year that they can use as leverage in trades or whatever it may be. Still some free agents out there. Overall, I think I'm giving Howie Roseman an A- in this draft. Just a great value production draft, and I think a couple of these guys are going to be day 1 players and turn out to be really good. So those are my overall thoughts. Give me yours down below in the comments. What is your grade for the Eagles 2025 NFL Draft. What do you think they should have done different, if anything at all? Give me all your thoughts on this draft class down below, and appreciate everybody for tapping in. As always, I will catch you all on the next one.